Hello, grade 9. Today we are going to study lesson 11.5, which is talking about square root functions. A square root function is a function in which the independent variable is under the square root sign. And as you know, the independent variable, which like the input, which we can denote it by the letter x. Then, let me give you an example. So in front of you now, we have a square root function, which is y equal square root 2x plus 3 and y equal 4 plus square root 3. So we can note here, if you look at the variable x, you will find that the variable x lies under the square root sign. So those two examples for square root functions. But if we will move to the example about non-square root function, you can see that y equal 2x plus square root 3 or y equal square root 4x. If we look at the value of x here and in the second example, you will find that the value of x is not under the square root sign. So we can say that those two equations will not be a square root function. Then, if we want to know the definition for a square root function, so the square root function is a function in which the independent variable is under the radical square root sign. Determine whether y equal 5 plus square root x over 2 is a square root function. Where is the variable? We can find the variable here is under the square root sign. So we would say yes, because x is under the square root sign. So this is a square root function. Then the square root of a negative number is not a real number. Therefore, the x value must be reciprocate or satisfy to the number that make the value under the radical sign greater than or equal to 0, which means we have the sign for the square root and the sign for the square root and the sign for the square root. To find the value of x under the square root, so the value of x, it should be positive number or it should be 0. But if it's a negative number, we can't accept. This not belong to the real number. So we will not accept a value of x by a negative number under the square root. So we can say that this one is a positive number and this is a 0. So this one, it will let us move to the second part in our lesson today, which how we can calculate the domain. So what is the domain? The domain, it will be the value of x under the radical sign, which it will give us the answer. Then, how we will calculate the domain? I have x plus 5, so we will cut the part under, or the expression under the square root sign, and we will put it more than or equal 0. More than or equal 0 means it's a 0 or positive number. As I said, we will not accept any negative number. Then it will be x plus 5 more than or equal 0. We will solve the inequality. We can say that we will add the additive inverse for both two signs, or by another way, we can say that you will transfer 5 to the opposite side with different sign. Then the domain is the set of all real numbers greater than or equal negative 5. Then again, how we can calculate the domain? We will take the expression under the radical sign and we will put it in the inequality more than or equal 0, and then we will solve the inequality. Now the domain is the set of all real numbers greater than or equal to negative 5. Let me check with you something. Now we said that the domain, which means the value of x, which it will keep the number under the square root, positive or 0. We said it's more than or equal negative 5. If I will substitute the value of x by negative 5, then it will be negative 5 plus 5, right? Then negative 5 plus 5, it will be 0. Then we can find the answer here. If we are looking for any number more than negative 5, for example, negative 4, so it will be negative 4 plus 5, it will be equal 1, square root 1. And square root 1, it will be equal 1. But if you will choose a number less than negative 5, like negative 3, for example, because we said more than or equal. So we are looking for a number less than, if you choose a number less than negative 5, like negative 7, for example, then it will be negative 7 plus 5. So the answer, it will be equal square root negative 2. So in this case, the answer, it will be wrong. As I said, we will not accept this. Why we have an answer here is wrong? Because you choose a number less than negative 5. For this reason, we said to calculate the domain, make the inequality more than or equal 0. Okay? Let's move to another example to calculate the domain. We are looking for the value of x. Here in this question, we will take the expression under the square root and we will make it with the inequality 4x minus 12 more than or equal 0. We will add 12 to both sides, then 4x more than or equal 12, then x is more than or equal 3, which means the domain in the set of all real numbers greater than or equal 3. This is just an exercise. Then determine whether each of the following square root is a function. Then y equal is a square root function. Square root 8 plus x. If this one, it will be a square root function? No, it will not be a square root function. Why? Because x is not under the square root sign. What about this one? Is square root 8 plus x. If this one, it will be square root? Yes. Why? Because the variable x, or the independent variable, is under the square root sign. So we will back again to this one. For find the domain, as I said, we will find the domain, we will cut x plus 5. So it will be x plus 5 more than or equal 0. Then we will add negative 5 to both sides. Then x is more than or equal negative 5. Then the domain in the set of all real numbers greater than or equal to negative 5. When we make this one, 4x minus 12, then 4x minus 12, it will be more than or equal 0. Add additive inverse, then 4x more than or equal 12. Divide by 4, divide by 4, then x is more than or equal 3. So the domain is the set of all real numbers greater than or equal to 3. Now we have an exercise for the first one. Determine whether the following are square root functions and explain. For the first question, y equal square root 8 plus x. X here in this question is not under the square root sign. So the answer, it will be no, it's not a square root, because we have, so we will say here for the question, we will say no, because x is not under square root sign. Okay, so this is for the first question. For the second question, y equal square root 8 plus x. So this one is a square root function. Yes. What is the reason? Because x, or independent variable, is under square root sign. Okay, if we will move to the next part here, find the domain of each square root. Okay, then now we will move to the next part, which is find the domain of each square root. How we will calculate the domain? We will take the expression under the square root sign, so it will be 5x minus 8 more than or equal 0. We will transfer 8, so it will be by the end x is more than or equal 8 over 5. After that, the answer it will be all real numbers more than or equal 8 over 5. Okay, then to find the domain, as I said, you will find the expression under the radical sign, and then you will make it more than or equal 0. So the answer it would be all real numbers greater than or equal. Like this question, you will take x over 5, and it will be more than or equal 0, more than or equal 0. Then we can make cross product, or we can say that you will multiply both sides by 5, multiply this one by 5, then by the end it will be x more than or equal 0, because you will cancel this together, so you have x more than or equal 0. Then we can say that the domain in this question, it will be all real numbers greater than or equal 0. What about this one? It will be x over 3 plus 2 more than or equal 0. Then I will transfer x to the 2 to the opposite side, so it will be x over 3 more than or equal -2. Then we will divide both sides by 3, then x is more than or equal -6. So the domain, it will be all real numbers greater than or equal -6. So this is how we can find, first, how you will determine if the function is a square root function or not. The second part was how we can find the domain. Third part, which we want to talk about it today, how we can express or how we can represent the function graphically. So you can use the domain of the square root function to help you to graph. We said if I want to graph f of x equals square root 3x minus 6. So you will take 3x minus 6 more than or equal 0, because we are looking for the domain. Then we will add 6 to the both sides. Then 3x is more than or equal 6. Divide by 3 for both two sides. Then x is more than or equal 2. So I can make the graph now. It's up to you to put the numbers, but it should be greater than or equal to. So this is just random numbers. You can use 2, you can use 3, you can use 10, you can use 15. It's up to you. But by the end, you will calculate and you will find the value of y, and then you will represent them graphically. You will choose the x values greater than or equal to generate the order path. So you can find the answer for different questions, and then you will represent it graphically. So this is the first part. Then now we can make a summary about our lesson today to understand the square root function. So we have a definition. So this map, it will help you to understand our lesson or to summary our lesson today. So the concept maybe below, the concept map below will help you to understand square roots functions. So we have the definition, a function whose rule contains a variable under the square root, as we said, the independent variable with x under the square root. Example for the square root function like square root x, y equals square root x plus 3 or 2 square root x minus 4. Not function like this one. Also, we can graph like y equals square root x plus 2 and see y equal square root x plus 2. When you look at the second one, you will find that the radical sign is x square root x plus 2, right? So y-intercept here is 2. But if you have a square root x plus a 2, right, then you will represent it graphically by find only order pair and then find it. Thank you for watching. See you next video, inshallah.